Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session on access control models. I'm Colonel Shubhajit Naha, and today I'll be taking a small session on access controls. Now, access controls plays an important role in our day-to-day cybersecurity life, but also for major certifications, whether you are trying to attempt CISSP or CISA or CISM or CRISC. Majority of cybersecurity certifications will test your knowledge as far as access controls is concerned. So let's see certain access control models and how they are designed. Right. So today, let's see certain access control models. So what is access control modeling? So access control modeling basically, you know, tries to build frameworks that can basically dictate how subjects, access objects. So it's all about how subjects are going to, if you have a certain subject which is trying to access an object, how to build this access control system, because in cybersecurity it's all about access, because access control is the one which can only protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data. So let's see understand access control with this small animation. So here we see a subject, right, who wants access to an object, right? So he wants access. Now, if there is no access control system, then it's just a public object. Anybody can use it. But the moment it's not a public object, then you have to build the access control methodology. Now, generally, whenever a subject demands an access, it provides some kind of identity and authentication data, right? It will provide a name and some proof that authenticates the information which the subject is providing. The responsibility of the access control is to judge whether to authorize the access or not authorize the access. So in this case, as you can see, the downwards arrow system, it validates if the access is granted, it can have the access. If it decides no, the identity and authentication data is not correct, it will deny the access. Now, what access control modeling does is basically, tries to, when we talk about access control model, we basically try to build frameworks which can allow this or deny this access. Now, this can be done based on certain modeling techniques. Now, first technique is called discretionary access control. Now, discretionary access control works on discretion. Discretion of whom? Discretion of the object owner. Whosoever owns this object. The owner decides whether to grant access or not to grant access. Okay, that means in this case, the access control is basically the decision which the owner makes who to grant access, who not to grant access. Now, in this case, what happens is generally object user creates a file and then gives permission for read and write. Okay. So generally, this is how you would have seen in Microsoft when you create a file and then you can grant access to somebody to read, somebody to write. Okay, so the ownership of the access control remains with the object owner, whosoever owns the object. Now, in most of these exams, you will be tested for this knowledge, whether it's a discretionary access control system or some other. Now, the next model is called the mandatory access control model. In mandatory access control model, you cannot bypass the mandate. That means that you will have to, stick with the mandate which has been provided, right? And generally, in such mandates, what happens is there is some central authority which decides as to what is the mandate for access. Now, in this particular case, in access control, mandatory access control, there is a authority. That means there will be a access control authority who will decide whether the subject can have access or not, right? If access has to be granted, then only the user can provide its identity and authentication data, and based on that, they will grant the access. Now, in mandatory access control system, since there is a central authority, the management of central authority becomes critical. That means somebody has to manage this, mandatory access control, right? So in this case, generally what happens is objects have certain classification, okay, and the subjects have some kind of label, right? So say this object is secret unless the label associated with the subject is secret, then only the access will be granted. But there still will be identification and authentication process, and then only the access will be granted. But to maintain this, there are overheads. So there will be overheads in maintaining this central authority, right? That means there will be an administrator who has to administer this kind of a access control model. Okay. Next is the role-based access control. Now, role-based access control also work on the principle of abstraction. Okay. Now, in role-based access control, what happens is users are granted permission based on specific tasks based on their roles. So there will be different roles associated with the subject. There could be admins, there could be users, there could be sub-admins, there could be an email administrator, a different kind of administrator you will have who will be granted access to the object, right? Now, this will not be on individuals, but there will be group of roles. Okay, there will be group of roles in which different subjects will be put as part of their permissions required. So if say this particular subjects are admins, then all admins will be put in one particular group. Then if you are user, all users will be put in one particular group. And such kind of access control methodology, when you build this access control framework, is called role-based access control. Right. The next is attribute-based access control. Now, attribute-based access control may be built up on top of other access control models. Means if there is a role-based access control model, you can add attribute-based access control on top of role-based access control model to provide better security. Now, attribute-based access controls combine some kind of an attribute associated with the subject, say a location, right? Say a user is trying to log in from India, access is granted. But if the user is trying to access from USA, then access is not granted. So such minor or granular controls can be built when you have attribute-based access control modeling systems, right? The next is the rule-based access control system. Now, rule-based access control system have certain rules predefined. Okay. Now, depending upon the rule, it checks for subject's access demand, and if the rule is matched, then the access is granted. Generally, network access control lists, which are put inside firewalls, are the best example of rule-based access control. You can always say rule-based access control are akin to attribute-based access control, right? So with this, we end today's learning session. If you want to contact us, these are our contact details. You can mail us on support@protected.io. You can call us on our customer support number. You can visit our websites. We have some wonderful course running for CISSP with almost 99% passing rates. CISM, CISA, CompTIA Security Plus, and we also have our own cybersecurity course, Cyber 101, which teaches the basics of cybersecurity. Besides that, we have more courses, including ISO 27001, lead implementer, lead auditor. So these are the courses we are offering at very, very genuine prices for the masses, and the training is of utmost, I will say, one of the best in the industry, right? I myself come with almost 25 years of experience, and we have very, very strict quality control on kind of training we provide. We also have a wonderful GRC functional course, which is highly subscribed, and herein we teach for how to prepare yourself for GRC roles. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please subscribe us, subscribe to our channel, and do check out our other videos on preparation for CISSP. Thank you, take care, and bye bye.